Whenever I do these mock drafts, I have a certain way of thinking. First round picks should be day one starters, high impact players. Second round picks could be day one starters if you needed them to, high impact players. Third round picks should be guys that you can count on year one if someone gets hurt or something, and a player that can eventually become a high impact starter in like year 2 or 3. And a fourth round pick, I see it as a guy who probably shouldn't get much playing time year 1, but could develop into a key piece to your team year 2 or 3. And 5th, 6th, and 7th round players, I mostly see them as depth players, special teamers, spot starters, role players, and every now and then, yes, he could get a steal in there, but for the most part, that's kind of how I go off of my picks. And of course, where they're picking in the round does matter. For example, if the Texans were to have an early second round pick, I would definitely expect that player to be a day one starter. But, this is just based on what we're picking this season. This could vary from season to season. Now, the next thing I kind of want to throw in there before we get into the mock draft is, this might be my last mock draft of the offseason. I don't know yet. If you guys want to see another mock draft, probably the week of the draft, then get this video to, let's say 100 likes. If this video gets 100 likes, I'll drop a fourth and final mock draft like the week of the draft. Anyways, without further ado, let's get into this mock draft. With the 23rd pick of the 2019 NFL Draft, I have our Houston Texans selecting Dalton Risner, right tackle out of Kansas State. If you watched my first mock draft, you guys know there's the guy I picked. And I really like this guy ever since my friend Rising Phoenix showed him to me, told me about him. I fell in love with the guy. Why? I mean, I already said it. He's 6'5", 310, perfect size, good in pass protection, good run blocking. He's smart. He finishes his blocks. Just everything about him is good. He's a day one starting right tackle. And I just think this guy's perfect for the Texans. And I'm pretty sure I mentioned it in my mock draft 1.0. This guy is very polished. That means Mike Devlin doesn't really have to teach him anything. Not that he really could. But, yeah, if we want our O-line to be good, we should really look at guys that are already developed or don't need much refinement. For example, a lot of people are high on Greg Little from Ole Miss. I don't want that guy here at all. Why? Because he's raw. And if he's raw, it means he needs some coaching. And Mike Devlin is not a guy you want coaching up your young offensive lineman, So it's better to get a guy that's more polished like Risner than to get a guy that needs some work. Now, with our second round pick, I have the Houston Texans selecting Amani Oruwariye, corner out of Penn State. He's 6'2", 205 pounds. He is good in man coverage and zone. He is really, really, really good when he's pressing, so he's a great press corner. He doesn't panic. He's very physical with the wide receivers. He has great recognition and awareness. He's a pretty decent tackler. Now, this guy sounds like a first-round pick, right? Well, so there obviously has to be some problems with him. Well, his problems are he kinda has to press. If he doesn't press, there's a chance he can get beat because he doesn't have that long speed that you would want. I mean, I'm not saying he's Jonathan Joseph slow. He's way faster than Jonathan Joseph. but he's someone that can get burned. The way Aruwariye wins is by being physical at the line of scrimmage, and I am okay with that. Why? Because the way teams shut down T.Y. Hilton, every now and then T.Y. Hilton has some games where he has like 3 receptions for like 30 yards. How do they do it? They just press him and he can't do anything. He can't get off press coverage. So we have Amani Aruwariye there to press T.Y. Hilton. He ain't going anywhere. We got to solve this T.Y. Hilton problem. Even though I dislike Bradley Roby, I think the Texans' plan for T.Y. Hilton is have, Bradley Roby, who's a fast corner, cover T.Y. And you know what? I'm fine with that. If that's their plan, it's okay. I mean, it makes sense. Fast guy on a fast guy. Well, then you need another guy on the other side who is bigger and can take on those big receivers. And I think Aruwariye can be this guy. And someone made this comparison a while ago, like a few months ago. I'm pretty sure it was Braylon, Breaking News Braylon. I'm pretty sure you guys have heard of him. Follow him on Twitter. He made this comparison of Aruwariye. Aruwariye is a young Jonathan Joseph. And I can totally see it. And Aruwariye, the way I see him, is a way more polished Rocky Ya-Sin. You know how everybody's all hyped up on Rocky Ya-Sin? Well, I think Aruwariye is Rocky Ya-Sin, but better. I think he's what everybody thinks Rocky Ya-Sin is. Rocky Ya-Sin, I don't think he's a day 1 starter. Amani Aruwariye is a day 1 starter. Now, with the second round pick, I have the Texans selecting Yodny Kajust, left tackle out of West Virginia. He's 6'5", 315 pounds. He anchors down in pass protection. He can pick up stunts real well. And you guys know one of the Texans' biggest problems on the offensive line this season was the stunts. Like, for example, if Mediocre was trying to pass over a guy to Davenport, they'd usually mess that up and, bad things would happen. This guy, he can actually do that real well. He's a very good run blocker. He comes off strong off the snap, so he can pretty much push people, create some push up front. He has good awareness. He's good in space. He can pull. He's an all-around good left tackle, and he can only play left tackle. That's the only spot he's played in, so don't try to move him because he's a left tackle. Now, if you would have told me this guy would be available for the Texans in the second round, I probably would have laughed at you. I'm like, there's no way he's going to be available there. But these past month or two, he's kind of been dropping, and it's not really a him thing. It's more of a other players rising, so it kind of pushes him down. But I will say this, it could be because of his quad injury. He's going to be out for 3 months. Obviously, he will be ready to go in time for training camp. But again, that's something to note. That's probably what has pushed him down quite a bit. And usually, I'm not the type of person that would like to pick players with injury issues in the second round because he did turn ACL in 2016. He had a minor injury in 2015. And now he has his quad injury. So, I mean, they're not huge injuries that stand out, like tearing 14 Achilles in like 2 years or whatever. It's not something that really stands out, but usually I would kind of try to avoid a player like this. But the situation the Texans are in, they kind of have to take a risk like this, in my opinion, because if you're going to fix that offensive line, you got to take risks like this. This guy, he's very, very good. He might have some injury concerns, but you got to risk it. If you're going to fix that O-line, it's a risk you got to take. And for a guy as talented as Yodny, I'd do it. Now, obviously, he does have some flaws. Like, unless you're one of the top 5 players, you're going to have some flaws. What are his flaws? Obviously, there's the injury concerns. And he's probably limited to a power running scheme, but that's fine by me because the Texans, what they've been trying to do for the past 5 years that O'Brien's been here is run a power run scheme. So that doesn't really affect the Texans unless they were trying to transition to a zone running scheme. They did run some of that last year, but I mean, it doesn't really matter to me. I think we're going to stick to power running, so it's totally fine with me. And another thing that is wrong with him is, I'm pretty sure if you played football at any level, something coaches always told you were leverage. You gotta have good leverage. Well, every now and then, Yodny kind of loses his leverage, so there is that. But it's nothing that's too worrisome. I think he could come in here and be a day one starter at left tackle for us. I would be comfortable with Yodny and Dalton Risner being our 2 starting tackles, even though they're rookies. I'd be totally fine with it. I think both of them would be huge upgrades over Julian Davenport and Seantrell Henderson. So I'd be totally fine with it. Now, in the 3rd round, I have the Texans selecting David Montgomery, running back out of Iowa State. He's 5'11", 220 pounds. So he has a good size. He can take on a huge workload. So if you need him to be an every down back, he can be that. Think of a Le'Veon Bell and Ezekiel Elliott. Those type of guys. He can handle the workload. He can set up his own blocks. He's patient. He has great balance. He's elusive, meaning he can make people miss. He doesn't go down easily. He holds onto the ball, so ball security is A1. He has good hands. He can get those tough yards. And most importantly, he can pass protect very well. What's wrong with him? Well, he's not exactly a fast guy. He's not. He's not going to be a guy that completely outruns everyone to the end zone for 80 yards. He's not. His vision is not too good in a zone blocking scheme. But that's fine. Why? Because the Texans have been trying to run a power scheme. So, again, I think he fits well with us. And if you want to get excited for him, a lot of people say that his NFL comparison is Kareem Hunt. I personally think it's Arian Foster. He reminds me a bit of Arian Foster. I think if his vision can improve in a zone blocking scheme, he could be an Arian Foster. Arian Foster, he did everything well. He had the power to run over people, but he didn't choose to run over people. He could just make a miss, and that's kind of how it is with David. And Arian Foster was not the fastest guy out there. Yes, every now and then he would break out a huge run, but by no means was Arian Foster considered a fast guy. And that's kind of what I see from David Montgomery. I think he'd be great with the Texans. I think him and Foreman, if Foreman comes back, hopefully he does, I think him and Foreman can be a great 1-2 punch for years to come, because obviously Lamar Miller is scheduled to be a free agent after the season, so you got to have a plan. I think David Montgomery would be a great plan, and I wouldn't be shocked if we were to draft David Montgomery. I wouldn't be shocked if he overtook Lamar Miller as a starting running back. I think he's that good. Now, the Texans don't have a 4th round pick, but with the 5th round pick, I have the Texans selecting Hunter Renfrow, wide receiver out of Clemson. I've had this guy in my mock draft before. I think it was mock draft 2.0. He's 5'10", 180. He's from Clemson. He has that connection with Watson. He has good hands. He recognizes coverage as well. He sits on the open zones. He's a slot receiver, though. That's his problem. He has a limited route tree. He didn't really run all the routes in Clemson. He's not a fast guy by any means, and he's not that good of a run blocker. I just see this guy as a back of the roster wide receiver that can really help out Watson if, Lord forbid, any of our starting wide receivers would go down, because once you get to the back of the roster with the wide receivers, you need guys that your quarterback can trust, and Hunter Renfrow is definitely a guy that Watson can trust. Now, with the 6th pick, or our 6th round pick, I have the Texans selecting Sheldrick Redwine, safety out of Miami. He's 6 feet tall. He's 200 pounds. He's a good tackler. He can cover tight ends. He high points the ball pretty well. And he has good speed. He could come in here and contribute on special teams day one. He could come in here in certain packages and cover tight ends, similar to what we're planning on doing with Tashawn Gibson. His problems, he's pretty inconsistent in deep zone when he's a safety out there. So you kind of want to keep him closer to the line of scrimmage, kind of like a box safety. And why is that a thing? Well, he has Kareem Jackson syndrome. What does that mean? Sometimes he doesn't turn his head, so yeah, there's that. And another thing that he struggles with is processing things. It's not that he doesn't process them well, it's that he processes them slow, if that makes sense. So I think that's something that can be worked on. I think he could, at some point, maybe turn into a solid starter for us, but early on in his career, I just see him as a quality depth player. And with our 7th round pick, I have the Texans selecting DeMarcus Christmas, defensive lineman out of Florida State. He's 6'3", 300 pounds. He's a good run defender, and his last year in college, he did show some pass rushing abilities, so maybe he can work on that. Now, I know the Texans need some interior pass rushers. Maybe DeMarcus Christmas can be developed into that, but day one, I just see him being a back of the roster type of guy, a guy who can be developed into a solid starter. And the Texans, I say this all the time, we are a breeding ground for defensive linemen. We are. We develop them really well. Example, Blackson, Covington, Dunn, Heath. We're working on Watkins. I think Daniel Ross ended up going to Dallas and started a few games over there and did pretty well. So the Texans are like this breeding ground for defensive linemen. And next season, we actually have 3 of our defensive linemen set to hit free agency. That's DJ Reader, who I hope we bring back. That's Joel Heath and Brandon Dunn. I highly doubt we bring them all back, but I hope we at least bring DJ Reader back. So it's important to start building up that depth now so you don't have to spend picks later on in next year's draft to replace them. So you draft the guy late here and have him kind of sit this year, learn and develop pretty well, and then he can be a rotational player next year. Again, how I said early on in my video, this is what I see with the late round picks, depth players, rotational players. That's pretty much what it is. And that pretty much concludes my mock draft 3.0. Comment down below what you think of my mock draft. Comment down below your own mock draft if you want to. And yeah, be sure to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace.